Times should not make Greta Thunberg Person of the Year. When I saw the voting, Hong Kong protesters had 94% support to become the Person of the Year. Greta Thunberg had 4% approval. But someone in the magazine has decided that democracy isn't good enough and made a decision on his own. It is not a personal attack, just some facts. She has an OCD, that is why all her attention is aimed on climate change. It is literally her obsession, and this is a diagnosed mental disease. She have not purposed a single decision to make the world better and gets 100 times more attention than the 16-year-old guy who made a water purification invention which can save a lot of lives in Africa. All things what she is doing is blaming others. Isn't this a perfect example for the hate speech? In the same time, she is a hypocritical person, crossing the ocean by boat, but 2 crew people need to fly by plane. I am not even talking about an attempt to deny and blame the technology evolution. She just literally made a CO2 plane emissions 2 times more than if she took a flight to New York. In her home she has chair from natural leather which costs $7,000, and another one for $6,000. And yes, her childhood is stolen. Finally, she said that eco-activism does not work, but who cares, she is a star now. Modern eco-activists reminds me some religious or whatever fanatics, who are using the purest words to cover their real intentions. That's another story. Now we should critically think about people who supports Greta Thunberg and admit that she doesn't deserve to be Person of the Year. They want that Chinese money. In the same time she is a hypothetical person. Whoa, she's not even real. My interactions with Time magazine is limited to seeing copies of it in the checkout lane as I buy groceries. I don't think I care. The polls have zero effect on who they pick. It's all editorial BS. What the hell did she do other than regurgitate the same bullshit that we've been saying for years? I'm all about combating climate change, but Greta didn't do anything at all other than make a meme. When I saw the voting, Hong Kong protesters had 94% support to become the Person of the Year. Greta Thunberg had 4% approval. Doesn't seem to be an unpopular opinion then. Times still wants that Chinese money. Who reads the Times, dude? I haven't seen a single copy since the 90s at the dentist. Time magazine named Greta? That's going to trigger the shit out of this subreddit. It should be given to Boyan Slat or Elon or even Mr. Beast for fuck's sake. It is not a personal attack, just some facts. She has an OCD, that is why all her attention is aimed on climate change. It is literally her obsession, and this is a diagnosed mental disease. I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, OCD, and selective mutism. That basically means I only speak when I think it's necessary. Now is one of those moments. Greta Thunberg in her TEDx talk. Stockholm, November 2018. Everybody gives a lot of shit to Greta because she does nothing but whining, but isn't it better to whine in front of the ones who are really capable of saving the world, politicians/rich people, than planting trees or whatever? Don't get me wrong, it's good to do so, but it won't save the world. Only rich people can save the world, and that's what she's saying. Democracy isn't the method with which companies operate, mate. No, Greta Thunberg isn't committing hate speech for blaming people for their actions. This is just really, really stupid, mate. Think harder before your next post. My favorite is people nominating her for the Nobel Peace Prize alleged white LMAO. They don't have to take votes into account. It's their opinion and they are free to share it. You are free to disagree, so democracy isn't really hurt here. If 90% of people I ask suggest I pick an Android over an iPhone, but I want an iPhone, I'll still get an iPhone. A 16-year-old girl with autism who yelled at world leaders, even though they probably deserved it, about climate change. A small army of protesters who are fighting for freedom from an oppressive government. Ethiopian Prime Minister who helped stop a border conflict that ended a war. Which one of these is not like the other? Just some facts. She has an OCD, that is why all her attention is aimed on climate change. This is a gross misrepresentation of what OCD is. Please don't speak about things you know nothing about. I don't like Greta. As other posters have mentioned, her over-the-top and cringy speeches turn fence-sitters off, so she doesn't really change anything for the better. But that democracy thing upset is bullshit though. Time is a fucking company. Do you have a share in that company? No, you fucking don't. Then the magazine have zero responsibility to take your feelings and vote into account. God, I would love to see Greta travel to China and get on stage against Xi Jinping, demand that he stops China's emissions, rant for 10 minutes, then he just responds no and walks away. But of course we all know her handlers will never allow her to be anywhere near China. They know exactly how much of a train wreck it would be if she were to talk to someone who has a different opinion and she's forced to go off script. Hong Kong. Greta, even with her youth and naivete and gross overreacting and lack of understanding, still raised more attention than thousands of activist groups have managed to in 3 decades, with their skills and budgets and masses and all. It is very notable. Attention is exactly what public needed. Nobody expects for a teenager to solve climate crisis. But making entire world suddenly turn heads or volume up on TV is definitely an accomplishment. Making her a person of the year will enhance it even further. Why not? She hasn't done anything productive. She's a snobby rich kid with a mental illness that makes her rude and upfront, which is why everyone thinks she's so radical. No, she literally doesn't know how to filter herself into being polite and reserved, while condemning other celebrities for being that way without a mental illness. We should not support the behavior of a child, mentally challenged or not, throwing tantrums and providing no solutions. We already have world leaders doing that. At least she's made it on a list that includes some of the worst human beings to ever live. I learned about the Person of the Year when Bush Jr. was put on it, and I haven't taken it seriously my entire life. Hitler was the Time Person of the Year. Voting don't mean shit. Big fucking deal. I was Time Magazine's Person of the Year in 2006. Go ahead. Google it. I'll wait. 100% agree on that with you. Honestly though, who even reads the Times? Journalism is dead as we know it. It's just a bunch of failed college students who decided to get the easiest degree out there. So to not feel so inferior to others, they have to tell others how to think. Their message goes from one uneducated ear to another down the line. OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, a mental illness that makes people obsess irrationally over little things, like checking if your door is locked 20 times. Greta Thunberg has Asperger's, which is a mental condition, not a mental illness. People with Asperger's sometimes have special interests that they invest a lot of time in. Having a special interest / mentally ill. If they were talking about most useless person of the year, I would have agreed on putting her on the cover. Really, unpopular opinion, the whole planet is much more important than just Hong Kong. That woke scold has done nothing for the environment. At least Mr. Beast is having millions of trees planted, and Elon is trying to get the whole country solar powered. If you think her a hero, you're an idiot. Same goes for world leaders who fly private to unite against carbon emissions. In her home she has chair from natural leather which costs $7,000, and another one for $6,000. You went to her house? Thinking face. She is the definition of entitlement. Sailing around the world preaching how we need to change our lifestyles, like Greta, cool cause and all, but most of us have to work to earn a living. I'm not going to listen to someone with zero real-world experience tell me to change my lifestyle while she spends her stolen childhood literally sailing around the fucking world. You want to see a stolen childhood? Go to Rwanda or Burundi. Those childhoods were stolen. GTFO of here with your entitled nonsense. Wow, for once an unpopular opinion. She has a voice and is inspiring change across the world. If we give Hong Kong protesters Time Person of the Year, then we should give it to Chilean protesters and Bolivian protesters as well, who are also standing up to their government. Greta has autism, not OCD. And before you say anything stupid, autism is a developmental disorder, not a mental illness. Totally saw this post coming, LOL. Hong Kong protesters willingly threw their future well-being into uncertainty for their principles. Thunberg agitates about issues that have been acknowledged by millions of people for decades. Hong Kong protesters are going to have discernible impact on global history. Thunberg will one in a long line of barely remembered climate change activists. I'm laughing so hard at Hong Kong. I'm so sorry, this is serious, but oh my god, ahahaha. Honestly, I feel bad for the kid. Her parents are parading her around for attention and cash instead of letting her play outside or go to school. They are taking advantage of her, and she is the one who has to eat all the shit from people. She is right, her childhood was robbed, but it wasn't by these corporations, it was by her parents, and they should be the ones receiving hate. BTW, yes, her boat trip cost more carbon than if she had just flown. The ship has diesel generators, and just because something is carbon neutral doesn't mean it doesn't put out any carbon. Also, a lot of her crew had to be flown in. Her parents and publicists are fucking sick and should be the ones we all call a bitch. Lynching a little girl for being taken advantage of is ridiculous. Grow up. Here's my issue with Greta. Her message is great, she is brave, articulate, and she is right. All that being said, why is she protesting pipelines in Alberta the very week Denmark and Sweden approved Russia? https://www. TheMoscowTimes. com/2019/10/30/ Denmark approves Nord Stream 2 pipeline A67979, to build a pipeline through the Bering Sea to their nations. She strikes me as disingenuous. She also strikes me as someone who is paid to be someone else's problem. We all realize that we need to phase out fossil fuels, but we also realize that it isn't practical with our infrastructure. Currently, 2/3 of the world population live in poverty and don't have access to reliable energy. Alberta is the leading jurisdiction in oil and gas exploration in regards to safety, workers' rights, Aboriginal consultation, and environmental regulations. Full stop. Over the past 2 decades we have worked to transform our energy sector to be the top, as we were led to believe that it would lead to more investment and allow us to continue to adapt our sector. The past 5 years have been an organized smear campaign against Alberta's industry while the US ramps up production to levels never seen before. There are next to no flaring regulations, recycling regulations, or any government oversight. They can do whatever they want in the US, and Russia is even worse. Why isn't Greta campaigning at the UN for responsible energy production? Why don't we mandate that all UN members can only source oil from jurisdictions that meet stringent regulatory requirements? We need to triple energy output to bring the other 2/3 of Earth's population to our standard of living. If we are going to succeed in fighting poverty, and phase out coal, we will need natural gas, and oil. Canada cannot compete globally because our environmental regulations have cost companies millions and they cannot compete globally, and environmental activists have spent the last 5 years chastising Alberta's oil and gas industry, while leaving all others untouched. Some say it's our bitumen and heavy oil that is the problem. That would be fine, except California and Venezuela both mine heavy oil, more than Alberta does, and they mine it. As in, strip away unfathomably large swaths of land, tailing ponds, waste, and a ruined ecosystem. Alberta extracts heavy crude through SAGD. We pump steam down to the formation, heat up the heavy crude to a liquid and pump it to surface. Greta, like other environmental activists, have become tools for corporations to pay for and sick on their competition in order to corner markets and allow them to continue making record profits without adopting any further environmental regulations. They all pat themselves on the backs, give each other awards, while they attack jurisdictions trying to adopt their proposals and ideas. Greta and her ilk are doing harm, not good. They have diligently worked to allow Russia, Saudi Arabia, and USA to corner the oil market with their dirty, bloody products. Canada, Venezuela, and Iran have been effectively removed from the markets, and there is no competition and no incentive to improve. All models illustrate that oil and gas exploration will increase, year over year, for 40 years at least, and that growth will now be in sectors that have no oversight, no accountability, and now no competition. Even if we move away from natural gas and conventional crude oil, we will still need heavy crude for manufacturing of plastics and chemicals. That heavy crude will be mined, like it was 30 years ago on Alberta, at great cost to the ecosystem. The environmentalists like Greta continue to march us backwards, attack innovation, and keep us polluting. They want a silver bullet for our issues and would rather help their benefactors maintain the shitty, inexpensive practices used elsewhere in the world and hold out for some magical solution, than allow any investment in ways we can minimize the impacts of these devastating industries.